You've probably been reading Islamic books wrong your entire life, so let me tell you the correct method to maximize the benefit you get from any given Islamic book. Before I begin, let me define what I mean by Islamic book, because definitions is what makes a good student of knowledge. You have to be good at defining things, and I'll be honest, I'm not that good at defining things. But definitions are important. So when I say Islamic book, I'm not talking about random things you'll pick up in the bookstore that, are motivational or inspirational or kids' books. No. What I mean is that books that are part of the scholarly Islamic tradition in the various different sciences, whether you're reading a book about tazkiyah, purifying yourself, your soul, or whether it's in hadith and its terminologies, or whether it's in the fundamental creed and aqidah, or whether it's in fiqh and legal rulings, whether it's in tafsir. If you're reading a book that is written by a scholar in a specific topic, which most students of knowledge will do, and that's the vast majority of books you'll be reading. For those books, what a beginner student of knowledge might do is he'll be recommended a book, or he'll hear of a book, and he'll go and he'll buy it, and he will begin to read. And this is not horrible, but if he did some steps beforehand, took 5 or 10 minutes, he would be able to maximize the benefit way, way more. Not only that, if he's not able to complete the book, and let's be honest, that's the case for most of us. It is very rare to buy a book for the first time, especially if it's 3, 4, 500 pages, or sometimes it'll be 2 or 3,000 pages. Sometimes it'll be 10 volumes, right? It's very rare to finish the entire thing in a single sitting or in a single session, or even in a single time period, whether it's a month or two. It's very much more likely that you'll read part of it, then put it on your bookshelf for a while, read something else, study something else, go back to it after a while, read some more. And if this is the case, then if you haven't done these steps, you won't be able to benefit from that book while you are away from it. So what should you do before you begin the book? Before you begin any book, especially if it's for the sake of seeking knowledge, then what you should do is first familiarize yourself with the author. And this is such an important thing that most Islamic books that are written in Arabic, they'll actually include a section in the beginning that has the biography of the author. Now, some of these biographies will be quite long in the beginning of the book, some of them will be a page or two, but the important facts that you should know about the author at the very least is what year or what century he was born in, where he was born, who his teachers were, who his students were, what his main speciality was, whether he was a muhaddith or mufassir, or whether his expertise was fiqh, or whether it was tasawwuf and tazkiyah, whatever it was, right? What his expertise was, what books he wrote, or what his main contribution was, and then finally the year he died, and a bonus, the reason why he died. All of these things will give you some very, very important context as regarding what you read in the book. Because sometimes a book might mention a topic or a terminology, and that terminology, it might have different meanings throughout different centuries. In the century the author was in, it might have meant one thing. In the time period before that, it might have meant something else. In our current time period, it might mean something completely else. So when you're familiar with, the context in which the author was writing, nothing is divorced from the context. No matter what is written, no matter who it's written for, there's always a context based on the time and place. So if you are familiar with that, then you will be able to understand what he wrote much, much better than someone who has no idea about this. On top of that, when you're familiar with the time period, then you might also understand the reason he was writing for, whether it was in refutation to someone else, or whether there was a certain fitna at the time, or some problem arose as to why he wrote that book, whatever it might be, right? Sometimes the author doesn't tell you directly why he's writing the book. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But when you're familiar with the time period, then you will be able to inference a lot of things. The second thing that you want to familiarize yourself with is the methodology of the author. By methodology, I don't mean his aqidah and manhaj and things like that. Yes, that's important. You should know that as well. But I mean the methodology in this specific book. If it's a book about hadith, this muhaddith, what was his methodology in hadith? If it's in tafsir, this mufassir, what was his methodology in explaining the verses of the Quran? Whether it's fiqh or tazkiyah or anything else, be familiar with the methodology of the author. This way, when you're reading the book, you'll be able to understand why he said what he said. Or if something doesn't make sense to you, but you are familiar with his methodology, you will be able to understand why he came to that conclusion. And once you are familiar with his methodology, the next thing you want to do before you begin reading is go to the table of contents and just flip through it, just look through it. Even if you don't read every single chapter heading, just be familiar with the main chapter headings and main topics addressed in the book. This way, if you just remember the main topics the book addresses and the methodology of the author, you will be able to inference the vast majority of things that he will address in that book. This way, even if you don't complete the book, you will know what the book addresses and the answers it provides. That way, and this happens to me many times, someone asks me a question, for example, they'll come to me, and this is very often, they'll say, give me the evidence regarding so-and-so mas'ala in Hanafi fiqh. The madhab says one thing, Bukhari says something else. What's the evidence you guys have? And I already know in my mind that the answer they're looking for, the evidence they are looking for, I will find in either Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba or Musannaf Abdul Razak or Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar or Mushkil al-Athar. And if I don't find in these books, then I know what other books I go to. Even though all of these books I've just listed, I've read less than 1% of each of them. However, because I know what the author wrote about, what content is in the book, and what the methodology of the author is, and I'm roughly familiar with the chapter headings that are in these books, I know that whatever answer they are looking for, if I go to these books, I will find exactly what I'm looking for, and 99.9% of the times, I do find exactly what I am looking for, even though I've read less than 1% of these books. So this way, when you are familiar with the biography of the author, his methodology, and the table of contents, the topics that are addressed in the book, you will be able to maximize the benefit and utility of this book. هذا والله أعلم. I'm not a scholar, by the way, nor I would not even say I'm a student of knowledge. These are just some advices and benefits based on my own understanding and experience, and Allah knows far better. Assalamu alaikum.